TW, dead dog. Almost 3 years ago, I began dating a coworker's brother-in-law. She had set us up as he was recently divorced, and I had ended an abusive long-term relationship earlier that year. Their family/group of friends were very close, and throughout the relationship, we spent all of our time with his brother, sister-in-law, my coworker, his parents, and their friend group. I literally met the whole family/friend group on the same night I met my boyfriend. Needless to say, the relationship moved quickly, and I basically moved in after a few days together. There were initially many red flags in the first week that I ignored, but those would be different stories altogether. He expected me to clean, cook, take care of his animals, not hang out with my friends, wear only clothes he approved of, and go wherever he went. However, I loved the family dynamic as my dad passed the first week we were together, so I stupidly did not run away. He had 6 dogs and 1 goat. Unbeknownst to me, the man I was with had been looking for a puppy since the separation from his wife, as they had recently lost a puppy shortly before they separate. He arrived home from work one afternoon and told me to get in the truck because we were going to pick up his new puppy from his dad. The puppy he was picking up was not just any puppy, but an English Mastiff. These dogs grow to be anywhere from 120 to 200 pounds, for those who don't know. The puppy was very small but would grow quickly due to its breed. I loved the puppy and immediately became the main caretaker. However, he would constantly remind me it's his puppy. I was the one that bought puppy food, toys, and puppy pads. On my 1-hour lunch breaks, I would go to my house to check on my animals, and then I would go to his house to check on his 6 dogs, goat, and puppy. The puppy's cage would of course need to be cleaned, and I would have to take the cage outside to spray it down before setting out new puppy pads. Remind you, this was going to be a big dog, so the mess I had to clean every day was bigger than a normal 8-week-old puppy's mess. My friend questioned why I was the one that had to take care of his animals, to which my naive self would always reply that it was easier for me to get away on lunch versus him. Flash forward 4 months, and the puppy had grown to be 56 pounds. She was taller than my full-grown dog of 7 years, and weighed the same as her. Saturday night we decided to go to his brother's house to watch football and grill. He brought his puppy, and I brought my dog. As always, the men sat outside with the football game on while drinking and grilling, and the women/children would be inside cooking sides and gossiping about whatever. I was always scared to let my dog stay outside, as I knew the brothers' 2 dogs liked to play in the road. They lived on a country road that got especially dark at night, and people always drove way too fast on. After a while, I went outside to talk with my boyfriend and left my dog inside. By this point, the men were so drunk that they were calling people they thought may be sober and asking them to drive an hour and a half to the beach when the football game was over. I remember during this specific conversation is when we heard a car driving very fast down the road and a loud thud. My boyfriend immediately knew somehow that it was the puppy that got hit. "She's dead," he screamed and began crying. I ran inside to check on my dog and told the women to not let my dog out and that the puppy had just been hit. By the time I came back outside, the car that hit the dog had turned around to apologize, stating that it was dark, they were all playing in the road, and it was too late to stop by the time she realized. The men yelled at the woman, cussing and belittling her before she ended up driving away. At this time, no one had gone to check on or move the dog. My boyfriend, 28, was now lying face down in the dirt crying and dry heaving. I, 25, 136 pounds, went to the road and carried the puppy, 56 pounds, about 150 feet to the porch. His dad was outside continuing to watch the game and saying, "That's a good woman," while I was struggling to walk the dead puppy to the porch. My boyfriend's brother was tending to him as he was still crying and screaming in the dirt. I sat the puppy down in the grass and went inside to find a box. While searching for a box to put the puppy in, fire ants had covered the puppy's body, and they attacked me so badly that I have scars on my arms from their bites. I ultimately had to put the puppy in multiple kitchen trash bags. My boyfriend's father was trying to convince him to bury the dog on his land, but he stated he wanted to cremate her. His suggestion was to keep her in the deep freezer, along with all the meat they used for cooking, until he could take her to the vet on Monday. His family thought it was crazy, but they agreed. Skip ahead to Monday, and my boyfriend had made no mention of getting the puppy. I personally thought it was weird to have a dog in the deep freezer surrounded by meat we all eat, so I asked multiple times if he was going to be getting her. Shockingly, he ended up asking me if I would to take her to the vet for him, and I stupidly agreed. I went on my lunch break to his brother's house to get the dog out of the deep freezer. I thought it was hard carrying the dog the day she died, but let me tell you, a frozen dog in a freezer that small is not easy to get out. I'll spare those details. I struggled immensely, but eventually got the dog to the vet. The workers there all asked why he didn't bring her in and seemed annoyed he asked me to do it. After all, this is a small town, and multiple people at the vet, including the vet himself, grew up with the family and have taken care of many of their previous dogs. My boyfriend said if I dropped her off, he would stop by and pay for the cremation. Flash forward another 2 months, and the dog's remains are still at the vet with no payment on the cremation. My dog became sick with cancer at this time, and I was frequenting the vet multiple times a week before she ended up passing. Every time I went, my boyfriend asked me to pay for the cremation, stating he would pay me back. Based on his track history, I knew he would not pay me back. It was around $150, which I could have managed, but I had already spent close to $2,000 on my dog that month. I wanted to draw the line. I did all the work with this dog, and I knew if I paid for the remains, I would not get that money back and that the remains wouldn't even come home to me and instead be put to the side in my boyfriend's house. If it was my choice, I would have buried her. When my dog passed, I got her cremated at the same vet. My boyfriend knew I was going to pick her up and again asked me to pay for the puppy, but I acted like I didn't see the message until after I left. I also received a sweet, handwritten note from the vet apologizing for my loss. My boyfriend seemed jealous I received a handwritten note as he had never received one before, and I only found that vet because of him, and I could have at least paid for the puppy while I was there. Every now and again, if someone else mentioned the puppy, he would make me feel bad for not paying/picking her up and add it to his mental list of things that made me selfish. My boyfriend and I broke up 1 month later, at 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve, after I had already bought all of his kids' and family's Christmas presents. It turns out he had been cheating on me throughout the entire relationship. It had been 3 months in total since the puppy had been dropped off at the vet. Her remains were still there with no payment. Since I became closer to my coworker, his sister-in-law, during my relationship with my ex, I still hung out with her and parts of his family. 3 months after our breakup, 6 months since the dog was dropped off, my ex and I were around each other for the first time. He apologized for everything and I took it with a grain of salt. During our conversation, I did ask, although I already knew the answer, "Did you ever pick up the puppy's remains?" To which he gave the performance of his lifetime and held both hands up to his face while dropping his mouth open, think Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, stating he completely forgot and he still hadn't paid and was so sad. Again, this is truly the tip of the iceberg with the stories I could share. I woke up this morning thinking about the puppy 2 years later, wondering if she is still sitting at the vet's office with no payment. I wonder if he somehow tried to convince them it was my dog and told them I was supposed to pay, but the vet knew I paid for my dog's visits in full every time, and I made sure they put it under his name. Anyways, AITAH for refusing to pay for his puppy's cremation?